welcome to everybody. We are being broadcast, so please keep that in mind. In terms of the agenda, we'll go over that quickly in the minutes, and then we'll get down to business. Susan is here to swear in members with expired terms. We've got some action items from last meeting, some items from the select board meeting, one of which I'm anticipating Chris will be somewhat involved in discussion in terms of advisory committees. Yes, that's your intent? Chris, that's your intent?
Yes.
Okay. And then some old business in terms of the goals and the punch list and where we're going, and that may depend on the discussion with Chris. Spring meeting scheduled, and we have committee reports and business, and then I sincerely hope we can get out of here at a reasonable hour tonight. So, all right. Any questions or comments on the minutes that Marge so nicely did for us with a little bit of editing? No questions or comments. How many people, I don't want to ask this on TV, how many people have actually read them?
I read them.
Good.
Actually, I forget.
The only 3 weeks ago, but I read them. The only thing I found was there was a typo towards the end. The AABC will come up with. It should be with some recommendations. I don't know whether that was you or me, March. So that would be the only thing. So anybody want to make a vote?
Wits might be better.
Yes.
I make a motion that the minutes be accepted as read.
Or how about as edited?
Edited.
Okay. All right. Second. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, 1 abstention. Everybody else in favor. All right. Thank you. And I can't think of your title, Susan. I'm totally blanking. Thank you. Madam Moderator, would you like to swear in our members whose terms are expiring? Les, Mary Ann, Glenn, and Bonnie is not here. So.
If they're willing.
That's right. The membership will be updated on Google Drive. All the membership itself.
I got a card. Can't forget to bring
I
it
sent out an email, but it didn't get updated on Google Drive.
Okay, and just by way of reminding everybody what they have affirmed in the past, I thought I would read this out loud, and the people who are signing can fill in the blanks. The oath of office, as set forth in the New Hampshire Constitution at Part 2, Article 84, this oath particular to the Alstead Advisory Budget Committee, I, great complete name, do solemnly affirm that I will bear faith and true allegiance to the United States of America and the state of New Hampshire, and will support the Constitution thereof. This I do under the pains and penalties of perjury. I, pretty complete name, do solemnly and sincerely affirm that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all duties incumbent on me as appointed to the Alstead Advisory Budget Committee, according to the best of my abilities, agreeably to the rules and regulations of this Constitution and law of the state of New Hampshire. This I do under the pains and penalties of perjury. And there's a place for you to sign and date, and then I sign. And then that's it.
The front there, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
I was so happy.
So does this mean that they now have 3-year terms starting?
3.
Brave souls.
You can always resign.
It's not intentional.
I wouldn't be too worried about it at this point.
Although it sometimes feels like it.
And then the 4th person is
Bonnie LaFawn Chase, and she has been working all sorts of overtime, so we haven't seen her in a while, so hopefully she will be willing
Maybe
to.
you can just let me know. It's
Yeah.
not a problem for me to pop in.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good to see you. Take care. All right, action items from last meeting. You still had an open item, Priscilla, about a revenue report. I don't know if you're looking into that or not.
Got released yesterday.
Okay. Latest budget printouts on the table. If anybody needs to look at it, Glenn, any comments about it? So I don't know whether you looked at it in any detail from last night. Actually, it's a week
That
old.
was a week old.
Yep.
I don't recall runs more thoroughly at the end of the month.
I think there's a couple of things with the ambulance that are high. And the other thing I noticed was that it seems like all the executive software support, does that get billed at the beginning of the month, or at the beginning of the year first?
I have to double check with.
It seems like it, because they're all right up there.
Yeah, I think that's the case.
Okay. All right, so if anybody wants to look at, yes, sir.
I finally finished the spreadsheet I was doing based on quarterly expenses. Does anybody care to look at it?
Yes.
Sure. Anybody want to see it?
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, what tell us more about the... Well, I think
So rather than looking at it weekly or monthly, it's
quarterly. Because that's sort of seasonal expenses.
Gotcha. Right, that's right.
You know, you expect a lot of salt to be spent in the first quarter, and some in the last quarter, and none in the summer, kind of idea.
Gotcha.
Um,
Yeah, that's right. I remember you were doing that.
Yeah, anybody want to?
So is it comparison or just quarterly?
Well, the comparisons are very evident. You know, I mean, you can see how much.
Years by years.
I have it, I don't know if I have it quarterly for 14, but I definitely have it quarterly for 15. And I'm starting to do it quarterly for 16.
Well, that would be good.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, especially I think during the slower months, it might be helpful, you know, rather than trying to look at this and figure out what's going on and give us a big picture.
Exactly.
Are you putting percents in it at all?
I can if you'd like, but I haven't up till now, except for the year total. But I don't know how useful the year total is, frankly, as a percentage. But I can do it quarterly if you'd like.
Well, I mean, I think the year total percent makes things stand out. Like when you see something like the software that's almost, you know, it's at 95%. And, you know, so then the question is, well, okay, is that a one-time thing or is there going to be more? And, you know, that makes you ask those kind of questions. So I find the percents helpful personally.
But she's talking the end of the year percents. Ours is important because it's the end of the year, but I still think they are. Because it gives you an idea of what monies had to be switched. And then to look to
It's
see.
not necessarily why.
Right, not why, but then you can ask the questions why. So I think the end of the year percentage are important.
Yeah, I'm going to leave that in, but if you want me to add quarterly percentages, I will too.
That would be.
Yeah,
Just so that it's
Okay.
I think the quarterly percentage should be there, so we can have we can
Okay.
plan it out if something looks like it's going over all the time. And we can put what percent.
Okay. I will do quarterly percentages.
So when Linda sends me the Excel, I'll just forward it to you and you'll
Well,
fill that in?
actually, I was in the office today dropping off something for getting paid. They want to be able to pay me electronically
Oh, for the
for
counting
the,
of votes. Oh,
for the voting counting. And I had a long talk with them about this, and I'm going to send her an email and ask to be copied in when she sends you
Okay.
the copy.
That way I will.
And that seems like the easiest way for them to do it. Just remind her to add me to.
Because I always send her sorry to have a conversation, but
No, it's
I
perfect.
always send her an email just a reminder.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, just to be safe.
Add my name, because I don't want to send an email every 2 weeks.
And I'll do that, and what I was also planning on asking Linda and Kelly to give us is to the quarter, this to date of labor hours, because she can run a thing and we can analyze that too, see where the labor hours are going. Tells you a lot of information. So I'll have CC you on that too.
Speaking of labor, where's that at with the overtime and all that stuff? That
Well,
did not come up last night, so.
I think you guys had a discussion with David, and that was about as far as it went.
So far, and we have David coming in for his regular monthly now, reporting. And that's where I think we're going to get into the detail of that.
Okay. And, I mean, that labor printout is very, very helpful in who's doing what. You've seen that before, Tom, but
Is this what was produced from T-sheets or?
this is, it's just an Excel that you can sort whichever way you want to go by, either by employee or department, or, so you can actually see where they are and trucks existed until probably 3/4 of the way through last year.
You're kidding.
That you could actually get that report and sort it differently.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I didn't know it existed until you just brought it up.
Okay.
But thank you.
By the way, please thank David for me for greening Pratt Road today.
He's on vacation, but yeah.
Well,
Pass it on.
he's clearly told somebody to do something, and it was greatly appreciated. Pratt Road was getting really bad.
They've been out quite a bit, because they've been out there grader and.
They did Homestead Road a while ago.
Hey, Chris, before I forget, was that your radio thingy that was on?
Yes.
Okay, it was laying on the floor here, so.
That figures.
I kind of figured it was yours. Good, I'm glad you got it. Okay, all right, select board meeting items. And I will leave the biggest one for last here. The fire truck, the EMSG made a recommendation of which truck to go with, and we had emailed the select board last week, and it was discussed last night, and they agreed to go with our recommendations, which not only was, we thought, the best truck, but also lowest bid, which was nice, and well under the amount of money that was approved by the warrant articles, too. So, yeah, that was a good thing. And then, so Chris is going to sign the sales agreement for that tonight, or it looks like you're probably doing that as we speak. And Linda will be notifying the other vendors, and I'll follow up to thank them for their efforts and all their input, and we'll move forward. So the delivery time on that is about 200 days, which is nice, because that'll be somewhere, I would guess, between Halloween and Thanksgiving, roughly. And the other thing is we got to get the door done at the fire station between now and then. So,
Quick point on that fire truck. Last time we were discussing
Yeah.
where the money came from. All the money withdrawn out of the capital reserve will be applied, and then the rest of it was coming out of fund balance. So they'll only withdraw the
Whatever's
amount
needed,
that they
balance.
need. So some of that money is going to be retained into the fund balance, which is great.
correct.
Either way, it would have gone back that way anyway, just to clarify where that money would go
Thank you.
back to.
It was 426, was it?
I think it was 428. I don't have it with me. Chris, what was the number on that? 428?
428 and change.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that was the fire truck. Let's see what else going down the list here, the easy stuff first. The transfer station was on here, but we didn't discuss it in any detail other than to say that that might be something that requires another spin-off committee. And I just want to mention a couple things. I kind of had a brain fart the other night after we had our meeting when we prioritized all of the stuff on the punch list. And, some of the things I was thinking, and this goes back to my prior to teaching days in manufacturing, with, what services do they actually provide, trying to figure that out, the challenges they encounter, looking at the methods they use, machines, manpower, materials, the cost to operate, the income generated, and then alternatives. So I threw that out last night, but we didn't get anywhere with it really, and understandably so, because David wasn't here, so that will be something that will be being discussed, so both by us and the select board. So where we go from that is to be determined. The ambulance people mentioned that they'd like to buy AEDs to put in all the town vehicles. I think it's a good idea, but from a personal level, I think the EMSG needs to talk to the ambulance squad, and I haven't talked to the EMSG about this. I don't think we're going to have much to do with the ambulance in terms of you've got a new captain and some things, but one thing from a personal standpoint, feel is that there's a lot of equipment that needs to be replaced, and there's a good example of where we should have a plan in terms of, what equipment needs to be replaced and when and that kind of stuff. So the talk with them may be more budget committee related than EMSG related. So the end of the EMSG is I hope by July 1st. So, we've accomplished a lot, I think, and I think the end is in sight on that. The gravel bid was awarded last night. The selectmen had a personnel meeting with, what do they call it, non-public now, with the staff, and the town administrator was briefly discussed, but nothing was detailed because of the fact that that was a non-public. Don't minutes of those meetings have to be made public at some point, Chris?
They will be.
Okay. I don't know what the timeline is. What's the timeline on that?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think there's gonna be any reason to keep them sealed for too long on this one.
It was, the question came up that one of the selectmen had said that he was opposed to a town administrator, but thought we should go ahead and advertise anyway, and I commented that I thought that was kind of putting the cart before the horse, and so it's still nebulous, I think, at this point would be a fair statement in terms of what, if anything, will be done, or...
Not really. I think what I can say at this point is we've got a good listing of requirements for the back office, if you will. So a good list of what all needs to be done and what skills are necessary to complete those. Based on that, then we're going to make a decision on which direction we go in staffing. Is it a town administrator plus an assistant? Is it a sort of a office administrator and an assistant? What do we need? Now, what's the best way to meet those requirements? So it starts off with what are your requirements, and we take it from there.
That's good. 2 questions. You still have the job descriptions that were developed, I think by one group, one set by Joel and Priscilla, and then the other was the one that came out of the HR committee for an administrator, went that way?
Yep.
Okay, and then, I'm going to totally blank on this, the punch list. Is that in the picture in terms of making a decision too, in terms of things that people have said, like we need to do this, we need to do that kind of stuff in town?
We can talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get around to that.
Okay.
Do your stuff first.
Okay. Just make a note. Okay, I mentioned that. The other thing was the selectmen mentioned they're trying to be a little bit more, I don't like using the word formal, but more systematic in how meetings are conducted with an agenda and what are you calling this, for lack of a better term, they're resident appointments. If people want to address the select board about something specific, basically calling in and saying, hey, can we talk? So
Can we be on the agenda?
Yeah, Chris is looking for a better term for that, so if anybody has any ideas, throw them out there, so. But, the other thing was that Mike Jasmine did address the select board about the food shelf, in terms of what exactly, is the town looking for in terms of any kind of that proceeding, in terms of what kind of more, I guess the consensus was that people wanted more information, and what was that information, what kind of tasks needed to be completed before they moved ahead, and we talked about surveying the property over here, site plan, the fact that it is in the floodplain, the questions about who would maintain the building, the property, all that kind of stuff, what other options there were. Did I forget anything from last night? Okay.
No, I thought Mike kind of, I think I was looking for something more substantive to come out of it. In other words, let's get some people actually together and start taking a serious look at that. But Mike kind of wanted to just first take a look at the property, walk it, and see if they can figure out on their side exactly what their requirements are. I guess it's not a bad idea.
Well, I know Matt Saxon has seemed rather gung-ho the last couple times I've talked to him. I guess it was the day of voting, that he thought it would be something for the planning committee to jump on in terms of doing something with that property, whether it was for the food shelf, a town facility, or whatever, but planning what to do with it, like the planning board probably should be doing. And so, hopefully, the right hand will be talking to the left hand in terms of this. Mike did ask, and he may appear tonight, but I told him that I suspected we were going to have a long meeting to begin with, that he's probably going to come to the next meeting and talk to us in terms of what we feel we need. And I'm not sure, personally, that that's necessarily needed, because I'm not sure that we really have any say in it.
Right, I was gonna say
That's
that's,
what we did have to say, that's the whole point.
well, no, because it was a town thing and had money, but not because it was
A budget committee.
It's not a budget.
it's not a budget issue until it is done and funds or whatever are being asked from the town. And they were asking for land, that's budget, that's monies, that's, that was our input. But I think it's a planning committee. I think it's a committee that like the MSG, somebody here might be on it.
And I tried to get on whatever committee it was, and it was so, I couldn't find one exactly. There's Mike and Joe, and then there's the board, but I couldn't figure out, nobody could tell me where, when, who.
Susan Esslinger seems to be quite involved in that, if that's.
She's on the board.
David Moody too.
Yeah.
Wouldn't they tell you when the meetings were or something, or?
I didn't reach out to them, I reached out to Mike and Joel.
So I'm not sure he spent his time
No,
here.
I know initially he was upset because we had taken a stand on it, and wanted to talk to us about that.
Okay.
And then, and then last night when I reached out to him, because he was, I saw him at the meeting and I told him that we might be a little long, he did not give me the impression that that's what he wanted to talk about. I think we all need to remember for next year that we probably need to do a little research before we take votes on stuff. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Before we take votes on stuff, but I'm sort of getting annoyed with people commenting about why did you guys vote on that, because I have yet to find an RSA, of course I don't know whether you've seen one, that says this is what you can vote on and this is what you can't vote on. And so that's one thing. And the other thing is like the selectmen could have said, no, we don't want your vote, we're not putting it in the report on that one, and they didn't. So it's, and my attitude is we're all fairly new at this thing. If we made a legitimate mistake, we made a mistake,
But
Was there a lot of
has a huge
abstentions?
amount of money.
On that one, there were a bunch of abstentions. And Gordon Kemp very nicely said at last week's meeting from what I saw in the video, and I'm not sure how many caught that he brought that up to whoever made the comment. I forget who it was.
It was about Silvio Conte.
Yeah, it was about the Silvio Conte. That one had a lot of abstentions about it. Ann Cartwright had asked about that. And she wasn't upset that we voted. She just wanted to understand why. And he made a point of saying, well, most of them did abstain because, the feeling was that we didn't have a whole lot of knowledge on it. So, but there was more comments about voting on the food shelf than anything else, why we were doing that. So.
Well, I think it's more of a lack of knowledge, and everybody lack of knowledge.
On that one, because there wasn't a lot of knowledge to be out there.
There's so many questions I have. I mean, the well over there, is that going to be theirs? Is it still ours? I mean, are they going to their own well?
Yeah, I mean, I also.
All the infrastructure. How much electric, is there electric run that whole way to the property?
And all of that is money issues. I mean, no question that was a money issue.
The other thing is the way it was worded, the town was giving use of the land, i.e. the land, to a nonprofit. I mean, if it had been worded that they wanted to lease the land for $1 a year for a period of X years, I would not have had a problem with it. But the idea that the town, on land the town paid for, was going to just give it to a nonprofit.
Well, the other thing is
It's not the only nonprofit in town. Why not give it to some other
they have a
nonprofit?
board, and this is my lack of knowledge. I don't know how active that board is versus Mary Lou. And do they have a plan of succession, when Mary Lou is no longer able to serve? And if not, then that raises a whole nother bunch of
I think
questions
that
too.
question's been asked a lot, and I think the answer is no.
Yeah.
Right, so that makes it worrisome.
Yeah, it does, exactly.
Yeah, so there's a ton of questions, and I don't think there's any question that there are budgetary related questions, and perhaps someone from this committee, Ann,
I'm happy to volunteer if somebody tell me who, where, and when.
Yeah, well, when Mike comes, let him know that. But I don't
He
think
knows that.
I don't think that necessarily the whole budget.
He's not exactly
is
on the
involved
committee.
Right.
in it.
He's like Mary Lou's spokesperson, from what I understand.
And the other thing I have a big problem with is this is not just something that just came up.
That's right.
This has been going on for over 2 years, if not 3 years.
Apparently some people in Langdon are working on it, but I don't know, are they doing it sounds like everybody's doing their own thing, there's not,
There's no organization.
like what you did with the fire.
We're getting a
Boom.
I'm the time.
Oh, yeah. All right.
I voted in favor of it, so I don't want to hear all these arguments again.
All right. Fair. Okay, so that's where we're at with that. I don't see that there's necessarily a need for us to get stupendously involved in that. He's welcome to come talk to us, as is any citizen, but we'll go from there. So, okay, advisory committees. Chris, why don't you speak up here, because this is...
Sure. So there's been a lot of, I'll say there's been a lot of email, there's been a lot of discussion, there's been a lot of conversation around the idea of advisory committees and what is their actual role. we have a completely new select board for the most part. And how do we work together? That's really the question. And some feel that it's almost like you have two groups working against each other. One of which is advisory and one of which is elected. And some people seem to feel that that's not right and it's probably not productive. So some people, go ahead.
Do you know how they feel we're working against each other?
There's just times when contention comes up. You know, should you guys weigh in on this, or why is their opinion offered here, or why is it in the town report, and so on and so on.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That sounds like the dismal part of what we are and what we do. You know, I understand that it may be important to some people, but
Yep.
it seems like we do an awful lot, and what they're talking about is the real, maybe faux pas or disagreements that somebody may have about wording, or...
I'm not going to attempt to understand or speak for anyone other than myself. So
Can you
when I
speak
talk,
for the select board? Is this view shared by other members of the select board?
I would say that this view is probably shared by some members of the select board. But
You want to expand this? Hold on, give me my Wednesday nights back? Terrific.
Can we get Chris's
Yeah,
statement
what I'm sort of
first?
saying, no, I'd like to say one thing first, because I think it might make it easier for Chris, that's why I want to say. I think the contention is one issue personally. I think there was an immense amount of contention, and I think part of that was, no question, my pushiness. I'll be right up front and say that, in terms of November, December, January, in terms of trying to get this budget done, because it wasn't getting done, and I mean, I felt like I was butted into a wall, and I think the rest of the committee was frustrated too. But I think that's one issue in terms of just the whole timeline. I think that could be easily resolved, because if you know, the bottom line is if we're working together and we're going to work on this timeline, then it's a done deal. Like you said, we're going to move forward and that's it. So, you know, where the advisory committee comes in, what the select board wants from it is another issue. And what people think of it is, you know, this is what you're doing. You're elected.